Welcome back to Jolie's, where you can get spicy sausage, roasted nuts, and premium React content on the tube. YouTube, that is. Today, we are looking at actually a fresh video this time around. Yee Haw Summer continues, and it is now time for DJ Peach Cobbler to tell us about Spaniards, Apache, and a Massacre. Let's get right into it. 3, 2, 1.
The trees here are in misery, and
oh, yeah.
The birds are in misery. I don't think they sing, they just screech in pain.
Hello.
I do have to say that Werner Herzog is one of the greatest, and I do believe that he is probably correct. This is not beautiful songs we hear in the forest. It is the howls of life, and life is pain.
Gamers, welcome back to Yee Haw Summer.
Yee-haw! Check the hat.
I decided to start filming outside. There's a turtle over there. He's gone. You didn't see him. That turtle was for me, not for you. In my last video, I discussed Captain Killmoon, otherwise known as John Cremeny, a skull-measuring soldier and cowboy who fought with the Apache and had reached pretty damn...
An American hero, sir. Well, our heroes are the biggest liars that can lie their way through history. This man's lies are still being cited in history books. Obviously an American hero.
Conclusions not only on their morals, but also the shapes of their skulls. I got some comments which seemed confused as to
Who the hell?
Why? That video was as fun as we are going to get. This is my darkest cobbler arc yet.
Whoa, because I mean he went through that really dark night of the soul recently. If you've watched some of the videos that he did, like in his in between, I guess the Apache series and whatever this series started. He was not in a good place. I don't blame him. I've been in that spot in some kind of recently too myself. So, you know, sometimes you just gotta drink the days away in order to heal the pains.
John Cremeny, between all his anecdotes about battle with Apache savages, wrote,
"If the white man has come to be regarded as the Apache's natural enemy, it may be set down as the result of long and murderous schooling. The inherent disposition of the American nomad inclined him to hospitality, but that inclination has been completely blotted out, and its opposite engrafted on his nature. Legends and traditions of white men's ingratitude have been handed down through so many generations, and the experiences of the living have been in such direct accordance with them that they have become prime articles of their creed."
So every time a white guy is mean to an Apache, does that, like, change their skull shape? Or, like, what the fuck are you... I know he was a cowboy phrenologist, but I expect some level of consistency, right? John...
Yeah, because if that quote's to be believed, it's like he understood that it's like, you know, the grief and the tragedy was what shaped the Apache nation to being at war with their enemy. And to, you know, I say we, it's not we, but I mean, the victors of history, the white man, you know, slowly transformed them. I think I said in my last video, if you know, as a, you know, predominantly Christian nation, he said that the Apache were, according to John Cromwell, worshiping the evil god of their deities. But to that I said, if we believed, you know, if we were losing in a war and, you know, we believe Satan came to us and said, if you start worshiping me or making sacrifices to me, I will help you win this war. And we were desperate. Don't you think the Christian nations would also do that? You know, that's like the two sides of the coin for the mythology, you know, the other thing to fall back on. So I don't know. There's, you know, it seems like this John Cromwell guy had an idea, but he was just too influenced by the scientific trends of his time to try to explain his gay away and explain his genocidal tendency away as well with calipers and skulls.
Cremeny is an easy man to hate, an easy man to mock, and that's why I had so much fun doing it. But the fact is,
and he'd do it again.
Absolutely right here. Every Western book I've read, everything about the Apache, it takes a minute to say, hey, this is just what this place is like. So I'm going to explore why it's like this. It's 1871, and you're a young lieutenant in the U.S. Army in Arizona. Tales of Apache raids haunt you as much as they do everyone else. Everyone feared the Apache. And yet, the chief of the Aravaipa Apache walks into your post and asks for protection. You explain that there are reservations set up in other places, that you are a humble lieutenant. You can't guarantee safety. And the chief's argument, his response to this lieutenant, well, it's very simple. Other people already live at that reservation, and they're not our people. Our people have always lived here and want to continue to do so in peace. Do you want that too? Lieutenant Whitman offered simple terms to Chief Eskiminson and his 150 Aravaipa Apache. Turn in your guns, accept being prisoners of war under my protection here. You will be allowed to live amongst yourselves, farm, it's a technical thing. And, I'll speak to my superiors about a more permanent solution to this problem. This Apache problem.
Sounds awful lot like an Apache question, and you know how we feel when something becomes a question. I cite other video, I forget which one. Might have been one of the Aztec ones. So essentially, when something becomes a question, any answer starts to become an acceptable one.
What a sinister deal. No, I yell at the book. No, don't do it, Eskiminson. He's a bad man. Taking that deal, it does speak to a hopeless and desperate situation. I don't like to get directly political in a contemporary sense, but I'm big on the Second Amendment. That's why I bought this puppy off Craigslist. The second to last thing you will ever do in your life is give your guns to the American fucking government. Lieutenant Whitman, though.
Amen, brother. I need to stock up myself. So a little bit about me. I don't own guns. Not that I don't believe in owning guns, at least maybe not until recently. I've had some disposition changes here in the last few years, but I don't own guns also. And maybe one of the reasons I coped with the idea that other people shouldn't own guns is because I have a tendency to not want to live sometimes, irrational drive maybe to find a quick exit. And I've always worried that if I have a quick exit in my grasp, I might just see myself to the door. So aside from other things, if you notice, I don't have tattoos either, but it's not out of lack of having any creative idea of what to do with art on my body and, dedication to it. I'm broke. I've been broke my entire adult life. I'm a broke bitch. I don't have money for these expendables, but also, even if I had money for a gun, I'd have to really, come to terms with, what it means to have a gun in my house. So, just something I've been, I've put a lot of thought into. But I do agree. You must, especially in the face of the federal government, own weapons. You can't go to a negotiating table with somebody with a gun and you empty-handed. That's not a negotiation. That's a surrender.
Well, he was a good guy. Nobody had told him that you don't do that here. That's why I was yelling no at the book. I had no idea that Lieutenant Whitman was so mistaken.
The Aravaipa Apache established a village a few miles up the creek, planted corn, and began cooking mescal. Impressed by their industry, Whitman employed them to cut hay for the camp's cavalry horses so they could earn money to buy supplies. Neighboring ranchers also employed some of them as laborers. The experiment worked so well that by mid-March, more than 100 other Apaches had joined Eskiminson's people, and others were coming almost daily.
So this is gonna...
There's this thing in movies, usually like movies about and around Jim Crow that was observed by one of the greatest podcasts of all time. Denzel Washington is the greatest actor of all time, period, with Kamal Bell and I am so sorry, the other person I'm losing it. I'll probably something Avery maybe. Anyways, that's not the important part. The important part is they observed that in movies set during Jim Crow, if everybody was having too much fun, celebrating, they were like they're about to turn the corner on a lynching, and that lynching is like in bloodthirsty mode and is looking for more people to lynch. I mean, it's just so this is already starting bad. Like everything's going well, that everything's going the way that it technically should be going according to what the, this whole Western expansion project idea of what they would be doing alongside the Apache. This is just not good. It's too peaceful. Something is a shoe's about to drop.
Sound like an insult, but I consider it baller as fuck. The Apache had the most primitive form of politics in existence.
Whoa,
you
okay.
listened to who you thought was worth listening to. I know how
What in tar nations?
savage and uncivilized. Punishment for crimes came in the form of banishment from the tribe, or however
I guess I'm kind of Apache. I tend to do that too. If I don't respect somebody at work, I don't listen to them for the most part if I do not have to. And I tried my best not to interact with them if I do not have to.
However bad the victim of the crime could kick the shit out
Maybe while I'm a poor broke bitch.
of you. And laws were
Let's go back a
unwritten.
bit.
However bad the victim, how savage and uncivilized. Punishment for crimes came in the form of banishment from the tribe, or however bad the victim of the crime could kick the shit out of you. And laws were unwritten. If you wanted to raid, which was considered a totally acceptable, economic practice, you just needed to convince your buddies. Raids were frequent, and newspapers.
God, this sounds like a civilization for the boys. Can we go back? Are we Apache at our hearts? This sounds like the libertarian utopia that libertarians scream about. And just the idea of like justice coming down to like banishment. Man, I would banish so many people. You have no idea the banishment. Ugh. It's almost a death sentence. Almost. It's like a death sentence that you get to still sleep at night knowing you didn't kill the guy yourself.
Papers spread these sordid tales of Apache raids across the broader Southwest. What started the American wars with the Apache was the kidnapping of a child during an Apache raid. The American government did what the American government does. They found the first guy they could blame, and then they tried to hold him hostage, and things got out of hand. So as the
let's see what that things got out of hand paper clipping says. I've let a few skip by, so let's see.
First guy they could blame, and then they tried to hold him hostage, and things got.
A Chicago, Washington special says government is fully determined not to propose new treaties with the hostile Indians of Arizona, but to prosecute the war against them with relentless severity, and troops will be particularly urged to effect the destruction of Chochais, the most noted and dangerous of Apache chiefs. Arizona citizen, December 17th of 1870. Interesting. I mean, it does feel like this is what it keeps coming back to. Also, what's this? Is there something over here, or am I just Oh, it's just okay. Nothing for you to be concerned about at home. It seems like this is always what it comes down to. Children, the innocent children are what allow the forces to push for one thing or the other. Like, when a child becomes a victim, that's when the world starts to lose its mind a little. But at the same time, for obvious reasons, that you don't want children to be caught in the crossfires. They are considered the ultimate innocent. So, but that there's possibly a game plan in play when the first time a child is harmed in a conflict that it escalates, instead of de-escalation, it escalates.
Out of hand. So as the Aravaipa Apache were living, by all indications, peacefully here at Camp Grant, raids were continuing.
What's up, gamers?
Did you know that the number of data breaches increases worldwide year after year? Did you know that I have stolen your identity and am currently in your favorite chair, drinking all of your yoo-hoos? Save
You son of a bitch.
yourself, your data, and your chocolate drink, whatever the fuck that is, by using Incogni.
Never touch a yoo-hoo.
Incogni will spare you the trouble of finding and requesting your
It's like
removal
chocolate water.
from these public databases, which, yes, anyone in the U.S. can search. Stalkers, nefarious actors, or even worse, your boss and or landlord can access this information. You can imagine how slimy these data brokers are, but Incogni gives no quarter and it takes no quarter.
What is this?
You won't have to lift a finger as they do the hard work for you. With Incogni, I saw reduced text messages from random third worlders who, for some reason, seem to get all of my packages by accident. These scammers get your phone number.
Oh, and here in Texas, tolls. You're getting random text messages about tolls I haven't paid and the consequences of not paying them, and then some .com address for me to go to and pay the toll.
From data brokers, and Incogni can save you from these annoying and constant messages. Furthermore, aforementioned landlords, bosses, and people attempting identity theft. Protect your yoo-hoos and safeguard your data by using code DJ Peach at the link below and get 60% off their annual plan. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring this video and saving yoo-hoos the world over.
What's up, gamers? So I forgot that there are dates. You're supposed to use a date when you do history.
Yeah, pretty important, dumbass.
1871. That's all the date you get. I don't like...
Wait, what? I need a month. Was it Cancer season? Are we talking like Gemini is the major constellation? God damn it.
I don't like using big dates. It just confuses you. You're gamers. You don't know what time is. So what I was supposed to fucking say here was in 1871.
A posse of 42 Mexicans and 6 Americans left Tucson towards Camp Grant.
It feels like he could have just put, and it would have been pretty artistic, just, the loud bang sound and just 1871 just up on the screen, and we would not have noticed shit. Just throwing that out there, Mr. Cobbler, but I do appreciate the, true to life, editing room, editing bay, if you will.
The intention of exterminating what they believed were the guilty Apache behind these raids. A further 92 Papago Indians were recruited as mercenaries. Lieutenant Whitman was warned of the posse's imminent arrival, and so he sent messengers, with warnings to the Apache camp. The messengers returned to Whitman with the news. There was no Apache camp. To read from the testimony of Dr. Conant B. Breesley, which was given to the Bureau of Indian Affairs,
the camp had been burned, and the dead bodies of some 21 women and children were lying scattered over the ground. Those who'd been wounded in the first instance had their brains beaten out with stones.
Ooh,
2 of the best-looking of the women were first ravished and then shot dead. Nearly all of the dead were mutilated. 1 infant of some 10 months was shot twice and 1 leg nearly hacked off.
This would become known as the Camp Grant Massacre. It was an act so morally abhorrent that President Ulysses S. Grant would threaten to place the entire state of Arizona under martial law if...
Wow. Just wow. Where is this going? That was awful.
This posse was not brought to justice. They had to be tried in a court of law. We are Americans, damn it. And tried they were. Justice was served. Not guilty. Listen,
Whoa! God! No! The justice system rarely works out in anybody's, before its intended consequence. I shouldn't say rarely. That's not what I mean. Every now and then, there is a great miscarriage of justice done by the justice system. Most recently, P. Diddy. Look at that one. Maybe I should not speak out of turn. I don't know all the details of his case, but it seemed like people following along were pretty upset about how it all transpired, if you will. Anyways, this is awful. I hate this.
The women and the children, they just did that. SIDS, right? Well, this was the first and last recorded case of Sistalco. Lieutenant Whitman, for the crime of possessing empathy in this time and place, was slandered by the same local papers which slandered the Apache he sought to protect. He was accused of looking the other way as the Apache did their raids, as he was busy, of course, with the dusky maidens, as the newspapers put it.
Dusky maidens. 5 dusky maidens voluntarily surrendered to Lieutenant Whitman, and so gentle and affectionate was the treatment received by those forward women that the next lass who came in deemed it proper to bring her buck along. This ravished subject in these suspicious circumstances unnerve us, and our pin drop powerless to do the subject's justice. Is that saying that he got with whores, just like any good public official? He had a good time with a few whores? I don't know. We'll see where this goes.
Maybe he had that Delonda dog in him. But I find Whitman's own explanation far more compelling.
I'd come to feel respect for men who, ignorant and naked, were still ashamed to lie or steal, and for women who would work cheerfully like slaves to clothe themselves and children, but untaught, held their virtue above price. Aware of the lies and hints industriously circulated by the puerile press of the territory, I was content to know I had positive proof they were so.
Eskiminson was not among the slain. The men were out hunting. Over 100 armed men descended upon a camp, which was almost completely composed of women, children, and the elderly. Eskiminson stayed in the mountains and did not return to Camp Grant. He refused to return to American custody, and obviously, how could you fucking blame him? When a representative of the Indian Bureau came to talk him into making the same mistake again, Eskaminson hit him with,
"The Tucson people write for the papers and tell their own story. The Apaches have no one to tell their story."
A situation which has been rectified to some degree, certainly, but all the same, I find myself in an unenviable position. I describe massacres so I can explain them. I like learning about people, why we are the way we are, why we do what we do. Bigotry does not need to be explained, but this is not just bigotry. It's something far angrier, deeper, more ancient. Surely, you noticed how wonderfully diverse the murder posse was. It is so fucking hot. To explain is not the same as to justify. Just because, you know now that the newspapers were not presenting the Apache perspective and were quick to blame anything on them, that doesn't mean the guys in the posse knew that. I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm gonna assume that murder posses have a pretty low median IQ.
Historians now discount the outrage of the pioneers and the hysterics of the newspapers, attributing ulterior motives to the merchants and editors as they demanded more soldiers to chase Indians and bring more business to Arizona and New Mexico. To the white people involved, this would have been utter nonsense, convinced as they were that the lives of every man, woman, and child in the territories were in deadly peril.
Also,
Big surprise! Journalists having ulterior motives and thus whipping up the common everyman into a constant frenzy to elicit the what is it called? That person, what is it? Manufactured consent. Wow. Yes, it was going on back then too. Ever since person was going out into a courtyard to scream the news, or call the news, I guess. Scream would be ridiculous. Anyways, I'm just saying, it seems like a story told time and time again, and journalists always seem to have some reason that they want to get people reading their papers upset, even if it's just to sell more papers or get more eyeballs. All right, folks, I just want to take a moment to thank you so much for watching my video. Of all the videos you could have chosen on the internet, you chose to watch this one with me, and all I have to say is howdy. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and if you have a friend who you think might have been abducted as a child and raised by somebody else's family, and that sort of thing happened to them, maybe share this video with them so they understand what might have been going on to cause them to be abducted. Anyways, with that said and out of the way, please enjoy the rest of the video.
I just gotta say this, it is easy to drag the Apache's public image. The stealing of the women, the children, the livestock. Livestock are useful. What's with the women and the children? Geronimo gave a dowry of many horses for his wife, Alope. The way he talked about it.
Perhaps the greatest joy to me was that now I could marry a fair Alope, I think he said, Alope, daughter of Noposo. She was a slender, delicate girl, but we had been lovers for a long time. So, as soon as the council granted me these privileges, I went to see her father concerning our marriage. Perhaps our love was of no interest to him. Perhaps he wanted to keep Alope with him, for she was a dutiful daughter. That's nice. At any rate, he asked me many ponies for her. I made no reply, but in a few days appeared before his wigwam with the herd of ponies and took with me Alope. This was all the marriage ceremony necessary in our tribe. Hell yeah, brother. No big special day. Just an exchange for an exchange. And for a dutiful daughter, too. You chose well, it seems.
Alope was so sweet. As sweet as Geronimo gets, anyway.
Wait, she was a good wife, but she was never strong. We followed the tradition of our fathers and were happy. 3 children came to us, children that played, loitered, and worked as I had done. Oh, yeah, she was a good wife, but she wasn't never strong. Okay, that's fair.
But it's important to note, Geronimo stole those horses. He might have killed someone, multiple people, for those horses. The Apache were just, they trained their kids like Navy SEALs, They were about this shit. You understand what I'm saying?
From early childhood, Apache boys were schooled in pain. They would be taught, for instance, to place dry sage on their skins, set fire to it, and let it burn to ashes without flinching. In winter, they had to go out at dawn and roll a ball of snow with bare hands until called away from the task. In foot races, laggards were lashed by adults. Had things always been thus, back beyond the 16th century in that uncertain time when an Athapascan people, with dogs but no horses, flint arrowheads but no iron, had first wandered into the Southwest from their ancestral domain in the Canadian North? Or had the Apaches, the most adaptable of tribes, learned their deadly severities from the descendants of those masters of cruelty, the Spanish conquistadors? The question in all likelihood.
Well, that's kind of like, in watching movies when some character from a previous season comes out of nowhere. Yeah, this it's like the conquistadors have made their appearance. They're especially like in a show like The Wire when a character is just alluded to that from like 3 seasons ago, and you're like, oh.
Will never be answered.
Let's answer that question. Well, Andres Resendez did.
I felt like I had something to say though about this whole like Navy SEAL toughening, like super toughening up of the Apache, and I mean there might be a reason why they have gone down as the most noted of the American Indian or Native American tribes, indigenous tribes that we still talk about and still like kind of hold a respect for, I guess. And yeah, when times are tough, you got to toughen up, and maybe they were trying to hold the idea of we always have to be tough. I mean, I'm not saying that it was I'm not saying it's necessarily makes for the brightest of lives, but it's going to make for the strongest of people, which will create more people usually, unless an overwhelming force comes in and kind of stomps you out. But I don't think that they were wrong to raise, especially the boys, to be so strong in such a harsh place. So also, I mean, that's the thing. It's like there's more men than we need for all the women because boys are much more expendable, and maybe some of us have to perish for others to succeed greater. I don't know. I'm kind of yet again in the cancel me section of my video. We can get more into that, I'm sure, some other time.
Who are the Apache? Where'd they come from? The biggest mistake you can make learning about the interactions between Europeans and their descendants and Native Americans is the assumption that both of them are not constantly changing. Just think about how much Europeans changed between 1492 and 1871. Athapascan-speaking peoples, who would later become the Apache and the Navajo, arrived in the Southwest around the same time as the Spaniards. Furthermore, Apache and Navajo are both exonyms. They both call themselves the Dine, which just means the people. I love what that illustrates about human nature because they hated each other, the Apache and the Navajo. They enslaved each other a lot. We'll explain why. But listen, we can't both be the people. One of us have to be the victims.
Very true. But that sounds like any great migration of people. It's like they get to the destination and then all of a sudden that like resentment brews up and they split into 2 groups. That just seems to be like one of those stories of humanity that we can never quite escape.
Europeans first encountered these Athapascan-speaking peoples in 1540 on the Coronado expedition. This testimony was recorded by Pedro de Castañeda. Spanish ethnography is a fucking nightmare, but this is almost certainly the people that would later become the Apache, or the people that would later become the Apache and the Navajo.
They have better figures or better warriors and are more feared than neighboring tribes. They travel like the Arabs, with tents and troops of dogs loaded with poles and having Moorish pack saddles with girths. When the load gets disarranged, the dogs howl, calling someone to fix them right. These people eat raw flesh and drink blood. They do not eat human flesh. They are kind people and not cruel. They are faithful friends.
Why did he mention that they didn't eat human flesh?
Wow.
Right? Like that seems, it's a very particular thing to note.
Maybe they had ran into people who did eat human flesh who were not friends.
Well, some Indian groups did, it's important to note that. But the real reason that Pedro wrote that down is you were not allowed to enslave Indians in the Spanish Empire. Unless, hey, they eat guys.
Yeah.
I promise. It's important to note that between this interaction and the Camp Grant Massacre was over 300 years. That is longer than America as a nation has existed. Anyway, though, for the next around 150 years, the Apache would get enslaved endlessly by the Spanish.
Oh, big
But
surprise.
it was illegal, you fucking idiot. All right, so you know how the law didn't mean anything in the Wild West? You could round up fuckers, go massacre some Apache, and then you'd be okay? That was the case here. for centuries in what I've taken to calling the Spanish slaving fields. The Spanish would slave the Indians by running them down on horseback, sending them southwards to labor in silver mines and Spanish households.
I guess they started eating flesh. It's a bad move. Did not work out for them.
12 million Africans shipped across the Atlantic total, and somewhere between 2.5 to 5 million Indian slaves in that time, according to The Other Slavery by Andres Resendez. Big gap. That's a big gap. The reason for that gap is this is a shadowy part of history, but it is there. It's been there. Everyone is stealing kids and women in the Wild West like you wouldn't believe.
At this place, a lieutenant commented, officers who have Indians in charge will have to exercise extreme vigilance, or the Indians' children will be stolen from them and sold.
What started the war between the Chiricahua Apache, including Geronimo, and the U.S. government was a child getting kidnapped from a ranch. Spaniards would run down the Indians themselves until the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, where the Pueblo, partially due to the Spanish labor demands, slavery, overthrew their masters and stole all those Spanish horses. That was how horses entered the hands of Indians. Once the Spaniards regained control of New Mexico, they couldn't run down the Indians anymore. You see, the fact is, the Ute and the Comanche in particular ended up with most of those fucking horses and lots of slaves to sell. The Ute would slave their close relatives, the Paute. Brothers were separated by distance, and then time, and then culture, and then language, and then finally, they are no longer brothers. That, to me, is the grand narrative of human history. Yee Haw Summer is about learning to forgive humanity and then becoming human again. I hope.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do. We'll see what happens.
Hey, you're not doing so bad, man. You're obviously losing weight, and I think you're getting your life back on track. I think your move was a good thing for you. Let's see if continuing to study history is still a good thing for you.
We're taking the war path against mankind itself. Intellectually, YouTube, please, for the love of God, do not delete my channel. The Comanche would gain incredible power and influence by capturing and selling Indian slaves to the Spanish. If you were in or near the Great Plains, you were a possible target. But the Comanche had favorites, and we called them the Apache. The Apache of the 1800s, right?
Ooh. That's kind of if you have like an enemy or a broad set of enemies, just divide them, give them some reason to self-divide and go to war with each other. It seems it's happened before. It'll happen again.
Lots of lies written about them. Make no mistake. Far from everything written about them is true, but they definitely did tie men upside down, put little campfires under their heads, and cook their live brains. They definitely...
Ooh.
I love when people tiptoe around this one. They took wives. You know what I mean? They would go and you go into the village, and you do things to the men, and then you take the women. I'm not saying this is okay. None of history is okay. What I'm illustrating is the Apache...
It's not okay, but it did happen. And we must acknowledge that and move forward with our understanding of reality, acknowledging what happened, even if it wasn't okay, even if it's rude, even if it's dangerous. We just have to acknowledge the truth.
She didn't invent this. They learned this. This was a reaction. This was the way that things were done here. Criminy, it killed me, man. He brought up how Christian belief, like turning the other cheek, right? It's alien to the Apache. Turning the other cheek? How foolish. First of all, turning the other cheek is supposed to be stupid. Like, that's the fucking point. You measure skulls, Criminy. I'm asking you this question now. How long can you turn the other cheek in the Spanish slaving fields? The Apache would fight...
Yeah, 100%. Because the turn the other cheek was meant to be in defiance. Like, I guess, if I remember correctly, it's Jesus basically saying that you are, it goes into the love thy enemy, do not fight thy enemy. It's like his, preaching peaceful resistance, essentially, which is what Martin Luther King based, the civil rights movement, his version of the civil rights movement around. Just like, exhaust them, make them realize that that they have the cruel intentions. But it's definitely not an obvious thing to do. You shouldn't hold people to it from that perspective, from it being obvious to do. I'm trying to think of exactly, how to say that. It's like your first instinct is to protect yourself, defend yourself, stand up for yourself, to maintain your dignity by lashing back out. It's like kind of like a second order thinking that Jesus, that God, let's just say it the way that, the most charitable to the Christian belief, God came to us and kind of was like, hey guys, have you thought about doing it this way? I'm going to go sacrifice myself for all of you now.
Many wars with the Comanche. Apache men were killed and women and children were dragged south. It wasn't until the 1820s that the balance of power in the Southwest shifted yet again. With Mexico fighting its war for independence, security on their northern frontier decayed, opening up Mexico to both Comanche and Apache raids. Those Comanche raids into Mexico ranged deep. This is a baller-ass map right here. The Apache were different, and there were reasons for that, and those reasons were not written in their skulls. They were written in blood. They were written in time. They were written in the most desperate of circumstances. Andres Resendez had to piece together a story of Indian enslavement, which is staggering in its implications, and which I hope you yourself will read. This one is worth it, I promise. You shouldn't have read Kremny's thing. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have recommended that. I like that book. No one else will like that book. As Europeans and their descendants put more and more pressure on the Apache, raiding would transform into a necessity. Their homes would be occupied and they'd have to live on the run. Consider this testimony from a chief of the Tonto Apache.
We are tired of living in caves and on the tops of cold mountains. My women carry water 2 or 3 miles from the little streams. They get water at night because we're afraid of soldiers. Even rabbits are safer than my Tontos. We hide our children behind big rocks when we go hunt the deer, but deer are not so many now. You say Tontos must not steal cattle, but we must steal or starve.
There's the key. Steal or starve. That's what it comes down to usually in history. It's like when you back somebody into a corner, when you give them no other option, when it's like life or death, literally, they are going to do what they have to do. Now, if you want to use that knowledge as a nation, to go to war with another nation, it's like, we're going to starve you, and then once you start stealing, then we're going to get the average rancher of this area to vote for your destruction, so we have legal ability to do it. I mean, this is just a step-by-step guide, if you will. Honestly, this is, and it was being done. If it was being done in the 1870s, it was being done before the 1870s. They didn't invent this whole cloth, and it's definitely still happening today.
White Americans have stolen our cornfields and our wheat fields. What are we to do?
John Kremny recorded the testimony of a Mexican general, the military governor of the state of Sonora, by the name of Carrasco. General Carrasco claimed the Apache would conduct raids in his state, then go to the state of Chihuahua, in which they were at peace with, to sell what they stole and get rations from the government. To be clear, this was tribute given to the Apache. The Apache were often giving tribute by the Mexican government. That is some steppe barbarian ass shit right there, man.
Yeah.
There's a turtle over there. I'm sorry you still can't see him. In light of this information,
Go get the turtle, damn it! I want to see the turtle.
General Carrasco assembled a militia and marched to Janos, where he planned to fight these Apache. Well, he didn't want to fight Apache. Who the fuck wants to fight Apache? No. You want to show up while the men are gone. Then you just kill the women and children. The massacre at Janos and the Camp Grant massacre. Do you think they waited for the men to leave?
Not being able to comprehend
That would actually been, I mean, obviously it's really tough to know when to do that, but how, like, as the men, you leave, but you just kind of go around the corner and then wait for all the guys to roll into town, hoping that they're going to just roll over on the women and children, and then you come out. That would be a great ending to the story that we're probably not going to get. That would be like the kind of like, oh, we've learned our lesson and we've learned how to subvert our enemy kind of thing. That it's probably not going to happen in real history. Howdy, folks. One more interruption just to remind you that I am, in fact, a tabletop game maker, and my first game, X Seekers of Fortune, is now being manufactured, and you can pre-order your copy of the first edition with all the bonuses that came with our Kickstarter campaign right now. Just go down the link below, xseekersoffortune.com, and find out more about it there. You can learn how to play and join our Discord where you can find people to play the game with. We're on Tabletop Simulator, so pretty much no fuss, no muss. Playing the game, though, is a must. Anyways, with that said, thank you so much for checking out the game. Thank you so much for your consideration. Let's get back into the video.
the virtue of a policy which feeds Indians in one state that they might prey upon and destroy the citizens of another, I concluded that my duty was to destroy the enemy wherever I could find him. Acting upon this decision, I waited until the allotted time for the Apaches to visit Janos to obtain their regular quarterly rations, and by forced marches at night, succeeded in reaching the place just as the carnival was at its height. We killed 130 and took about 90 prisoners, principally women and children.
General Carrasco, to be very clear, was a Mexican general in the 1800s, so he was not a good guy. All the good guys in this place were fucking dead. All the same, his course of action, like, it's not inherently unreasonable. This is all reasonable. That's what I need you to understand. Very reasonably were the mother, wife, and 3 children of Geronimo scalped and left to rot in the open desert at Janos. Carrasco did it. And Geronimo, by all indications...
Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen. There's probably a reason that even to this day, I'm not sure actually if you're like Gen X or not Gen Z or younger and watching this video. A, I applaud you for your interest in history and you, like watching a history react channel. That's wild. B, did you grow up with the name Geronimo just in the background of your head? Like, because there was like a name. I didn't know his history, but I knew the name Geronimo and that he was a great indigenous war chief, or we would have said Indian war chief, that had left such a marking on history that he was still being referenced. I think the biggest in my time growing up, how I would know his name is it would be the thing that you would see people say when they're jumping out of a plane. It was almost like a cliche. Like somebody would go up to a plane, the door and say Geronimo and jump out. It was almost like it's something you would say to give yourself the courage to do something crazy, because jumping out of a plane is fucking crazy. So, but did y'all also have that name sort of like rattling around in the background of your TV shows? Because I do feel like as a millennial, there's this great Looney Tunes tape. Like, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but because of the Cartoon Network and a few other things, they needed to fill that channel when it first came around before they had original programming with whatever cartoons they could, and they filled it to the brim with Looney Tunes. Also, Saturday morning TV shows. I remember it was just like Looney Tunes were around, and it was easy to see them, and they were often there. And because the Looney Tunes were created, like, I don't know, it was like somewhere between the 40s, 30s through the 50s, 60s maybe. There was a lot of cultural references that were just like carried over for a way longer period of time than you would expect in this day and age, especially. Like, every generation has its own TV shows. They don't have to cross-pollinate anymore. Like, we're lucky that Avatar: The Last Airbender has probably lasted, 2 generations. Like, it unites millennials and Gen Z and hopefully Gen Alpha, maybe Gen Beta if they don't falter due to their name. We got to give them a different name. I am on a tangent right now. It's actually not so much a tangent. It's more like a woman telling a story that goes nowhere but somehow covers everything. But ultimately, to say, there's a lot of cultural references that make history a lot more fun to research, because as a millennial, there's all these, like I said, cultural references put into my head that would not have gone there if it wasn't for this perfect time between TV being invented, but TV programming not proliferating to the point of there's always something new. Anyways, like I said, that's a little bit of a side tangent. But if you knew who Geronimo was, leave a comment. If you're especially if you're young, how did you know the name of Geronimo? What was your first memory of the name Geronimo?
Never knew who exactly did it. It was just a random Mexican militia. All Mexicans are the same as far as he was concerned, and so he spent the rest of his life killing all the Mexicans he could find.
I've killed many Mexicans. I do not know how many, for frequently I did not count them. Some of them were not worth counting. It's been a long time since then, but still I have no love for the Mexicans. With me, they were always treacherous and malicious. I'm old now, and shall never go on the warpath again. But if I were young and followed the warpath, it would lead into old Mexico.
A disquieting...
That sounds like mother effing the Inglourious Bastards. Some of them weren't worth counting. I wish I could say something so badass with my life. I'll find something when I'm an old man and have no longer been on the warpath of my life. But damn, I'm gaining a lot of respect for this Geronimo guy.
notion. I'm not the first to bring this up. It's such a part of Geronimo's story, this moment where he loses his family, right? But Carrasco took prisoners, slaves, which he sold somewhere else. So I don't know if Alope actually died. She's probably dead now, but I find the notion that she died just laboring somewhere in the shadowy places of history was disquieting, I suppose. So Yee Haw Summer isn't about the Apache.
All right.
It's about the people we are made to be by circumstance.
Hell yeah.
It is about learning to forgive the circumstances that people put you in. It's about learning to forgive people.
Sorry to interrupt, but good cinematography. Though you're a little blown out on your the light side, the side closest to the light. But I mean, overall, I see what you're going for, especially for how affordable this is. Just tip, and I should be doing this more often when I make videos that aren't just reactions. I'll hopefully get some, more dynamic angles going on. Put yourself next to a window. Oh, here, if this is your light. This is you. This is the camera. The camera should be pointing towards the light, and you should be like your shadow side is usually the one closest to the camera. And a good thing to get nice light is just to just stand next to a window during the daylight hours.
I realized during my prolonged existential crisis that my problem is not existence. It is existing as a human. Chief Escaminson, in the aftermath of the Camp Grant massacre, he shot a rancher that he'd been friends with for some time, a white rancher who he'd been friends with.
Asked why he killed his friend years later, Escaminson told an interpreter, "To teach my people that there must be no friendship between them and white men. Anyone can kill an enemy, but it takes a strong man to kill a friend."
Wow. Holy shit. We are just getting started. This Yee Haw Summer is going to be going on. It's going to get intense, I believe. But yeah, that almost reminds me, there was some sort of, I think a Dave Chappelle bit where he said, that his militant black grandfather was married to a white woman. And he said, he was always talking about when the revolution was going to come. And he asked, well, what's going to happen to your, what are you going to do with grandma? And he said, well, I'm going to have to kill her. And yeah, it's like, that it's serious. It's go time. And I don't want to come across as too militant and crazy and, dangerous or whatever. But that it's truly go time when you can turn and kill your friend, like somebody you consider a friend, because the dividing line is now such that they are no longer your friend. Like, I'm sure it happened. I'm sure it's happened with political divides too. I'm sure, like, a person who consider themselves a communist and a person who consider themselves a anti-fascist or whatever, or a fascist, could have probably been friends growing up, and then eventually they found themselves on opposite sides of the war, and ready to kill each other. So that's pretty badass. Oh, I always mean to do this. Let me just do, boop. There we go. All right. So is there anything else left to this? Probably just Patreon call-outs. Dark Wizard Wood Elf Patreon, Dark Wizard Patreon, King Patreons. You can see the difference. Anyways, well, thank y'all so much for watching. I'm going to now hopefully stay up to date with DJ Peach Cobbler, not covering his stuff immediately when it comes out, but within the week or so, his new videos, and then I'm still going to try to go back and pick off some of the more interesting videos from his other history series, and maybe even his cultural gaming series stuff. I also like that. But I also need to diversify, so expect a non-DJ Peach Cobbler video here in a bit. There's actually this one about the Tale of Gilgamesh. I specifically saw the thumbnail of it, and I said, I want to listen to that, but I gotta do it reacting. So be on the lookout for that one. But in the meantime, there's still a few minutes left on this, so let me just say thank you so much for watching my video, of choosing me out of all the other React content that you could have chosen. I appreciate that. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and if you know somebody if you have a friend who, when the battle lines are drawn, you're willing to kill, why don't you go and send them this video so they know. You might as well a friendly warning to them. Otherwise, as I said, well, as I said, no. Otherwise, I would just like to remind you that I am a game maker. I have a game. It's actually in manufacturing right now. It's going to be coming to America before the end of the year. So if you want to go check it out, it's called X Seekers of Fortune, and you'll find a link down in the description below. And aside from that, all I have to say is enjoy yourself.